Hello and welcome again to my live stream of my high school football championship series, streaming live on Twitch and later uploaded to YouTube. Subsequent games will be uploaded to, well, games will be uploaded to YouTube at a later date. All right, enough of that. Stumbling over my words here already this early in the broadcast. We just got started. Anyway, we're in week 7. This is it, the final week of the regular season in this high school championship series that I've been running. It's been an exciting series so far, to say the least. Lots of interesting games, lots of outcomes, some upsets, some crazy plays. Let me go ahead and give you a quick review of last week's action. So last week we had South Terrebonne defeating South Lafourche by a score of 28 to 14, and I do believe that was the first game that South Terrebonne played that ended in more than a single score outcome. So in other words, that was the first game they played where the final score was more than just 7 points or less. Um, so they've been in a lot of close games this season. We also had Morgan City narrowly defeating HL Bourgeois by a score of 10 to 9. Can't get much closer than that one, folks. Then we had Thibodeau defeating Ellender by a score of 17 to 10. That was an important game for both of those teams. And then to finish off the week, last week we had Terrebonne remaining undefeated with a final score of 33 to 18 over Central Lafourche. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get to our standings. I'll go over our standings real quick, and we'll take kind of a quick overview of what's going to be happening this week. So following week 6, our standings are as follows. Terrebonne is still atop the standings as the only undefeated team at 6-0. South Terrebonne is locked in at the number 2 spot with a 5-1 record. Thibodaux rounding out the top 3 with a 4-2 record, and then below them we've got Ellender at 3-3, and then a three-way tie currently for that 5th spot with South Lafourche, Morgan City, and Central Lafourche all sitting at 2-4. South Lafourche owns the tiebreaker over both of those two teams, which is why South Lafourche is at the top. And then between Morgan City and Central Lafourche, Morgan City actually owns the tiebreaker over Central Lafourche because they beat them head to head. Therefore, Morgan City is ranked just a slight bit higher than them. So, with that said, HL Bourgeois sitting at the bottom there at 0-6. With all that said, that means Morgan City, surprisingly, is now in that final playoff spot. Remember, we're running 6 of these teams are going to go into the playoffs after this week. So as it currently stands, if we ended the season today, um, well, if we ended the season as of these rankings, then Morgan City would actually sneak into the playoffs. Interestingly enough, so it's going to be a very important week this week between these games. Give you a quick preview of what we've got going on here. So these are the games we've got scheduled for this week. Morgan City is going to be playing South Terrebonne. HL is going to be at South Lafourche, and we've got Thibodaux at Terrebonne and Ellender at Central Lafourche. That last game there, Ellender and Central Lafourche, is going to be probably the most pivotal game of this week in terms of the standings. So looking at that and going back to the standings, uh, basically what this is going to mean is Ellender is pretty much in control of their destiny. If they can win, they're going to lock up that 4 spot. If they can beat Central Lafourche, they'll be at 4-3. Those top 3 spots, Terrebonne, South Terrebonne, and Thibodaux, those were all locked in. No matter what happens this week, none of those spots change. Um, if Terrebonne loses and South Terrebonne wins, they stay 1 and 2 exactly where they're at because Terrebonne owns the tiebreaker over South Terrebonne. If South Terrebonne would happen to lose and Thibodaux would happen to win, and they both end up with a 5-2 record, South Terrebonne stays where they're at and Thibodaux stays where they're at because South Terrebonne owns the tiebreaker over Thibodaux in their head-to-head. Likewise, even if Ellender wins and Thibodaux loses, then Thibodaux and Ellender would both be at 4-3. Thibodaux remains at the number 3 spot because Thibodaux owns the tiebreaker over Ellender. So 1, 2, and 3 are locked in. They're not moving at all. Ellender, however, could potentially drop, and you could see Central Lafourche jump up from 7 all the way to 4 if they beat Ellender this week. Um, so Central Lafourche, that's going to be a very, very important game, very pivotal game there at the end, like I said, between those two teams. And then, of course, depending on what happens with the other teams, we'll have to see. Uh, there's potentially, there could potentially be a four-way tie for these bottom spots, and if that happens, I'm going to have to figure out some tiebreakers because, again, our first tiebreaker goes to head-to-head matchups. But if we get some weird scenario where South Lafourche beats HL Bourgeois, and then Morgan City somehow beats South Terrebonne, and then Central Lafourche beats Ellender, we've got a predicament here because now we've got four teams sitting at 3 and 4, and some teams have beat other teams and other teams have beat other teams. So tiebreakers are going to get a little complicated there. So we'll have to see how this shakes out this week, but that's kind of what we're looking at. Morgan City looking to remember they've got the tiebreaker over Central Lafourche. So if Morgan City can win, once again, their future is kind of in their hands. If they can pull off the upset victory over South Terrebonne, that gives them the leg up over Central Lafourche for sure. South Lafourche still owns that tiebreaker over Morgan City and Central Lafourche. They could potentially move up a spot. Um, that it's just it. There's a lot of things that could happen. So very important week. We'll see how this all works out. Um, but pretty much that's kind of the preview for what we're looking at this week. We're going to do two games tonight on Tuesday, and then the final two games on Thursday, like we always do. Then after that I'm gonna wrap up all the rankings and figure out the standings and any tiebreakers that may have to happen. And then next week we're going to get into the playoffs. So we're going to go ahead and get the playoffs going and find ourselves a champion. So with all that out the way, let's go ahead and get on to it. Remember to subscribe here, like and subscribe, and all that type of stuff. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, whichever one you're watching this on, like and subscribe to that platform. And then once you go ahead and do the other one too, so you don't miss any of the action. You can catch us live on Twitch, and then at a later date, these get uploaded to YouTube, usually about a week later. So all right, let's get to it, and we are going to go ahead and get started here. Just 1 second. 3, 2, 1, let's go.